What's up guys, welcome to OCD Movie Reviews. My name is Oldman and welcome guys to another random movie review. Today I'm going to review Batman Begins. We are going to review the Dark Knight trilogy. Since Tenet has now been delayed, I decided to review probably my favorite Christopher Nolan movies of all time, and which is the Dark Knight trilogy. This is a trilogy that I've been growing up ever since I was 7 years old. This trilogy has been a big part of my life, and since this quarantine is still going right now and there's nothing else to review right now, I decided let's review my favorite movie franchises of all time. So I want to start, of course, with one of my favorite comic book movie trilogies of all time, which one of them is one of my favorite movies of all time. So let's go off with a movie that, of course, started it all, and that movie goes to Batman Begins. So Batman Begins came out in 2005, so I was 5 years old when this movie came out. So of course, I didn't see this movie in theaters, but my dad did. My dad and his cousins watched this movie, and he told me back then, this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And I still told my dad till this day, why didn't you take me to see Batman Begins? Of course, it's dark, it's inappropriate for a 5-year-old, so I watched this movie when I was 7 years old. I remember watching this movie, and I have an expression of an awe during that movie. I fell in love with Batman Begins since 2007, and I rewatched this movie. I actually watched this movie a lot this week because I just can't stop watching Batman Begins. I'm going to come into my conclusion and opinion. Batman Begins is the best Batman film that I have ever seen. Now, The Dark Knight is one of the greatest movies of all time. I don't feel like it's a Batman movie at all. I feel like it's a movie in a really extremely good way. But Batman Begins felt like a great Batman movie. And this gives me a thought that I am glad Batman and Robin exists, even though I hate that movie to guts. If Batman and Robin didn't exist, Batman Begins and this whole trilogy wouldn't happen. So I'm happy that Batman and Robin sucked. Even though I still don't want to talk about that movie, I'm glad it did suck. Because Batman Begins, in my opinion, is one of the best superhero movies ever made, I think. I would say Batman Begins felt more like a Bruce Wayne movie, in my opinion, than a Batman film. When you see Batman on screen, it is fantastic, it's phenomenal. Some of the best Batman that I've ever seen on screen, and best introduction to a superhero in general. Like, I love how Batman Begins was basically told. I love the screenplay of this movie. It basically has been told through flashbacks throughout the first half of the movie. Like the start of the movie, we already saw Bruce Wayne in this prison fighting off thugs, and he meets Henry Deckard, played by Liam Neeson, and he trains with him to try and find justice. Basically, Batman is becoming a ninja in this film. And I love the foreshadowing that Liam Neeson has done to go back to his flashback, like the scene where, of course, he does his first training with Henry Deckard, and he said, "What do you fear?" And then, of course, it goes from Bruce Wayne's childhood, when he's afraid of bats, when it goes for Bruce Wayne's parents' murder. That scene was intense, and I just love that transition in this film. I love the storytelling in this film. It just told through flashbacks, but it's very clear. It's not messy or anything. But then we go to, of course, Bruce Wayne training with Henry Deckard to become this ninja. This is one of the most badass scenes that I've ever seen, where they're training on the ice cap. That scene was absolutely spectacular. The way that scene is filmed is fantastic. So let's talk about the casting of Batman Begins, of course, because this has some of the best portrayals that I've seen in a superhero film. Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne / Batman. Like I said before, this movie tells a better story of Bruce Wayne than Batman. When you see Batman on screen, Christian Bale did a great performance as Batman, but I loved him as Bruce Wayne. His character through most of this movie is very, very likable. You really get to go with Bruce Wayne on this journey to become Batman. It's basically a movie about a man becoming a man. It's probably one of my favorite Batman performances that I've ever seen. I know a lot of people hate his sore throatish voice, like, "Where were the other drugs going?" But I like it. I don't give a crap. I liked his sore throatish voice. It just makes Batman more badass. And if you think about it, he has to hide his voice somehow. He can't just sound like Bruce Wayne or people will recognize him. So he has no choice to have a deep, dark voice. But the rest of the cast is fantastic also. We got Michael Caine as Alfred. Now this guy nails the role of Alfred. I don't see anyone else can play Alfred better than Michael Caine. He felt basically sort of like a father to Bruce Wayne in a way, but also a friend who's trying to protect him. And I loved his performance in this film. Michael Caine, phenomenal as Alfred, and he gets better throughout the other movies. Now, I know a lot of people were controversial with this, but I didn't mind Katie Holmes as Rachel. I think she's probably one of the better love interests I've seen in the superhero film, because she wasn't really a damsel in distress, even though there's one scene that she was. She actually does stuff in the film. She does some really smart decisions in this film. And I thought Katie Holmes did a good performance as Rachel. I don't see anything wrong. A lot of people didn't like it. Yes, Maggie Gyllenhaal was better in The Dark Knight than Katie Holmes. But still, I still think Katie Holmes is good. Also, we got Morgan Freeman as Lucius Foss, basically introducing the gear that Batman uses. And I just love the way his chemistry is with Bruce Wayne. He's basically thinking, okay, I know what Bruce Wayne's doing, but he's kind of not showing it. I just love his chemistry with Bruce Wayne. I think Morgan Freeman was fantastic. Of course, he's freaking Morgan Freeman. He's like a god. Also, we got Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. Now, this is the performance like Michael Caine as Alfred. No one can play Commissioner Gordon as good as Gary Oldman. I just love his chemistry with Batman also. It's such a good hero and sidekick type scenario in the most realistic way. Like Batman, you don't need Robin. You got Commissioner Gordon. And I thought Gary Oldman does a great performance as Commissioner Gordon. I love that scene where he basically wraps the coat over young Bruce Wayne after his parents is murdered. That scene was just so sweet in the film. But then throughout the movie, he just becomes probably the best portrayals that I've seen from Commissioner Gordon. So I would say Gary Oldman is just phenomenal in this movie as Commissioner Gordon. Just perfect casting this movie right there. But I would say the most underrated performance in Batman Begins, or even a comic film in general, is Liam Neeson as Henry Deckard / Ra's al Ghul, which we find out at the end. I think this is one of the best Liam Neeson performances that I have seen, to be honest. I liked him with Taken, of course. I think it's his most underrated performance. Not much people talk about Henry Deckard in this movie. I thought he was phenomenal. He just says probably some of the best quotes that I've heard in a Batman movie. You finally get to do what is necessary. Make sure you mind your surroundings. Also, we got Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. Now, this is another controversial casting because not much people really liked Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. I liked him in this film because the thing about Spider-Man 3 that did a mistake with putting villains together is that it has nothing to do with the story of Joe. They just come out apparently. In Batman Begins, it makes sense why Scarecrow is in this film. He's in it for the story. And it just goes from a story to another very clearly, and it just goes straight to the point. So I didn't mind Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, even though I really want to see more of him because he's so awesome in the film. Of course, this movie has some of the best Batmobiles I've ever seen. The Tumbler, that thing was just freaking badass. I just want to drive that thing. That whole Tumbler chase scene was very, very intense. The whole entire score in general by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. The Batman theme, holy shit. This is a theme that'll basically last my life forever. I could listen to that theme every time. I usually listen to that theme with earphones volumed up. It sounds fucking epic. Of course, the action in Batman Begins was fantastic. I love the way that Batman was introduced in the film. It's basically felt like a horror movie. You see Batman taking out these thugs that, of course, was hired by Falcone, played by Tom Wilkinson. And I just love how Batman basically, you see him like taking out these guys, but you don't see Batman. You just see the guys basically getting kicked ass. And then you get the reveal of Batman, where, of course, Falcone's like, what the hell are you? And, of course, Batman grabs him out of the car and says his famous lines.
What the hell are you? I'm Batman. Nice go.
Just probably the best I'm Batman quote that I have ever seen. I think Christian Bale was fantastic Batman. He's always been my favorite Batman. And I gotta say, Batman Begins is probably one of the best origin stories put into film. I love the way the origin story is. It's told through flashbacks, but very smooth and very, very clearly. We see Batman becoming this ninja and becoming the Batman. And this film is a simple plot. How Bruce Wayne became Batman. They took it in the most realistic way. I love Batman Begins, guys. This is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Everything about this movie is just clear, it's simple, it's fantastic written. It's a film that I'll never ever get bored. I could watch Batman Begins every single day and it always keeps a smile on my face. Everything about Batman Begins is a great introduction to one of the greatest trilogies of all time. I'm going to give Batman Begins a 9 out of 10. Alright guys, stay tuned for next week for my review of The Dark Knight. This is the movie that I'm so excited to review. So, look forward to that, guys. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching my review of Batman Begins. And let me know down below, after this trilogy review, what movie franchise you want me to do. And also another question, what is your favorite movie in the Dark Knight trilogy? I think everyone will know that answer. But if you like something besides the Dark Knight, I want to hear that. But also, what is your favorite Batman movie as well? Which is another thing that's quite obvious. Why am I asking these questions? Everyone knows The Dark Knight is one of the best Batman movies. Anyway guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys follow me on Facebook, Stardust, Instagram, Twitter. The social media links will be below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day.